The morning I drove up to my cabin, I expected to find nothing more than a quiet view of the trees, maybe the sound of birds, and a peaceful little property waiting for its next guests. Instead, the sight that greeted me nearly made me slam the brakes. The wide clearing in front of my cabin wasn't empty at all. It looked like someone had turned it into the set of a wedding movie. There were rows of white chairs carefully arranged in the grass, ribbons tied to the trees, a few tables already stacked with decorations, and in the middle of it all, a massive rented tent. For a moment, I genuinely thought I must have pulled up to the wrong cabin. I just sat there in my car, staring through the windshield, trying to process what I was looking at. The strange part was how perfectly everything was arranged. Whoever had done this hadn't just dumped things around, they had been planning it for days. Flowers lined the little path that led up to the cabin door, and I could even see lights strung up across the porch railing. My cozy cabin had been hijacked and transformed into a wedding venue, without so much as a call, a message, or a booking in the system. The first thing that hit me wasn't even anger, it was disbelief. How could anyone be this bold? How could they just decide that because my cabin looked pretty, it was theirs to take? I grabbed my phone and called my property manager right away, my voice almost trembling with both frustration and confusion. "Did we rent this place out for a wedding?" I asked, already knowing the answer but hoping somehow there had been a mix-up. The manager, sounding just as surprised as I felt, said, "Nope, the only booking we've got is for tomorrow, just a couple coming in for a weekend stay. Definitely not a wedding, and definitely not today." That only deepened the mystery, because it meant whoever had done this had no permission whatsoever. They had simply shown up and treated private property like their personal event hall. I stepped out of the car, taking in the details more closely. On one of the tables lay a clipboard with seating charts, names scribbled down, and little sticky notes for bride's side and groom's side. It was surreal. Someone had invested time, money, and effort to stage their big day here, all while completely ignoring the fact that this cabin wasn't theirs. The decorations weren't random or last minute, it was clear this was meant to be a real wedding with dozens of guests. That realization shifted something in me. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. And in that moment, a sinking feeling started creeping in. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to admit they were wrong easily. If they had the audacity to take over someone's property without permission, what else would they try when confronted? I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of the chaos. She appeared out of nowhere, like she had been waiting for me to notice the setup and question it. The woman was in her late 50s, dressed sharply but with that unmistakable air of superiority, chin lifted high, sunglasses perched on her head even though we were surrounded by shade, and a clipboard clutched in one hand like it was a badge of authority. She didn't walk up as though she needed to explain herself. She marched forward like I was the intruder on her property. Before I could even open my mouth, she announced herself, "I'm the president of the HOA." She said it like it was supposed to mean something, like those words automatically granted her access to every square foot of land in the area. I was caught off guard. My cabin wasn't even under the HOA's control, yet here she was, acting like she had jurisdiction. Then she delivered the claim that would set the entire confrontation in motion: "This cabin has been reserved for my daughter's wedding. 100 guests are arriving today." At first, I thought I misheard her. 100 guests? My tiny cabin couldn't even comfortably hold 10 people inside, let alone serve as the headquarters for a wedding the size of a small concert. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe she was joking or confusing my property with another venue down the road. But she didn't crack a smile. Her eyes narrowed as if daring me to question her. I asked calmly, "When did you make this reservation?" "Because I manage all bookings, and there's nothing under your name." She scoffed at my words like they were beneath her. "I don't need to go through your little website," she snapped, tapping her clipboard. "I reserved this cabin through the HOA, and that means it's mine for today." That's when it clicked. She wasn't operating with logic, she was operating with entitlement. She truly believed that announcing something made it true, no matter what evidence or facts existed. Her confidence was so overbearing that for a second, I almost doubted myself. Almost. I pulled out my phone, ready to show her the rental records, but she cut me off again. "Look, my daughter is expecting her dream wedding here. Guests are already on their way. You standing here and trying to argue isn't just rude, it's destructive. You'll be personally responsible if anything goes wrong." The sheer audacity of her tone was unbelievable. She spoke as if I was some kind of wedding crasher trying to ruin her plans, when in reality, she had hijacked my property without permission. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that the cabin was already booked for someone else tomorrow and that her name wasn't anywhere in the system. But reasoning only made her angrier. Her face flushed, her voice got louder, and she started repeating, "I reserved this place, I reserved it, and you can't just throw me out." It was at that moment I realized this wasn't going to be a calm discussion. She had planted her flag in the ground, and she wasn't moving without a fight. The argument reached a boiling point faster than I could have imagined. I thought maybe showing her proof would calm her down, but when logic doesn't exist in someone's world, evidence only fuels their anger. As I pulled up the rental agreement on my phone, she waved her hand dismissively, as if facts didn't matter. Her voice rose, sharp and commanding, like she was addressing a crowd rather than just me. "You're trespassing on my daughter's big day," she snapped. "If you don't move your car and stop interfering, I'll have no choice but to call the police." I almost laughed at how backwards it all sounded, me trespassing on my own property. I reminded her, firmly this time, that this cabin belonged to me and that she had no legal claim to it. That was the moment her face twisted in outrage, and without another word, she yanked her phone out of her bag and started dialing. "Hello, yes, I need police immediately," she said loudly, pacing in front of the porch like an actress performing for an invisible audience. "There's a man here refusing to leave. He's harassing me, and he's trying to sabotage my daughter's wedding." She shot me a triumphant look, as though calling 911 was her trump card, the move that would guarantee victory. My stomach tightened. I wasn't afraid of the truth coming out, I had all the proof I needed, but the sheer unpredictability of the situation rattled me. Who knows what story she would spin to the responding officers? And with 100 guests supposedly on their way, the chaos could escalate beyond control. I tried to interject, speaking loudly enough so the dispatcher might hear me through her phone. "This is my cabin. She doesn't have permission to be here. I can show every document you need." She hissed at me like I'd just insulted her family, covering the speaker as if to block my voice. Then she went back to her dramatic monologue. "Yes, he's being aggressive. He won't let us use the property we reserved." At that point, I knew there was no turning back. She had pulled the pin on the grenade. All I could do was wait for the police to arrive and hope common sense would prevail. My pulse raced, but I kept reminding myself, "You own this cabin. You're in the right. Stay calm." Minutes stretched like hours until the sound of sirens echoed faintly through the mountain roads. Karen straightened her shoulders, clearly believing the cavalry was arriving to sweep her to victory. She even smirked, muttering under her breath, "Now you'll see." What she didn't realize was that her call wasn't going to expose me, it was about to expose her. The wail of sirens grew louder until a patrol car rolled slowly up the gravel drive, its tires crunching against the stones. Karen immediately straightened like a soldier awaiting backup, waving her arms dramatically as if she had just been rescued from danger. "Officers, over here," she called out, her voice rising above the mountain air. She rushed toward them before they had even stepped out, pointing back at me like I was some kind of criminal caught in the act. The two officers exchanged a glance, then calmly approached. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem?" one of them asked. Karen wasted no time launching into her performance. "This man is refusing to leave," she declared, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "He's harassing me, and he's trying to ruin my daughter's wedding. We reserved this cabin for today, and now everything is falling apart because of him." I waited until she finished her act, then stepped forward, keeping my tone steady. "Officers, this is my property. I own this cabin. I have all the rental records right here." I held up my phone, already open to the booking confirmation for the couple arriving tomorrow. The officer nodded for me to hand it over, scanning the details carefully. "So this cabin is privately owned by you," he confirmed. I nodded. "And she doesn't appear on any of these reservations?" Another shake of my head. Karen immediately cut in, her voice rising like a siren of its own. That's because the HOA handles it. My daughter's wedding is supposed to be here, and he's lying to cover his tracks. You have to make him leave. The officers turned back to her, their expressions calm but skeptical. Ma'am, the paperwork shows the property is under his name. Do you have any proof of your reservation? Any contract? Receipt? Email? That single question seemed to puncture her confidence. She fumbled with her clipboard, flipping through pages of seating charts and guest lists, but of course there was no legal contract in sight. I don't need a receipt, she snapped, her voice losing its polished edge. I'm the HOA president. That should be enough. The younger officer raised an eyebrow. Being part of an HOA doesn't give you ownership over private property. Unless you can provide documentation, you don't have the right to host anything here. The silence that followed was almost satisfying. For the first time since I arrived, Karen looked unsettled, like the ground beneath her certainty had cracked. She tried one last push, her voice trembling between anger and desperation. You don't understand. Guests are already on their way. My daughter's day is ruined because of him. The senior officer gave a slow, deliberate shake of his head. No, ma'am. It's ruined because you tried to take over something that doesn't belong to you. You need to pack up and leave before this escalates further. Karen's mouth fell open, and for a moment I thought she might argue again, but the firmness in their tone left no room. Her grand performance had finally hit a wall she couldn't climb over. The moment the officers made it clear she had no claim, Karen's entire posture shifted. Gone was the bold, commanding president who had barked orders with her clipboard like it was a royal scepter. What replaced it was something almost theatrical, a woman unraveling in slow motion. She pressed her hand dramatically to her chest, gasping like she'd been betrayed. This is unbelievable, she cried out, pacing back and forth in front of the tent. Do you have any idea what you've done? My daughter's dream wedding is destroyed. The officers stayed firm, repeating calmly that she needed to remove her belongings and leave the property. One even gestured toward the decorations, suggesting she call the rental company to relocate everything. But Karen wasn't about to exit quietly. Her voice rose into a wail, carrying down the mountain road. You'll regret this. Everyone will hear about how cruel you've been. The HOA will come after you, and you'll wish you never crossed me. I stood silently, watching her tantrum unfold, torn between disbelief and a strange sort of fascination. She truly acted as though she had been robbed, as if taking over someone else's property without permission was her birthright. The officers remained unshaken, one of them finally saying, "Ma'am, this is your last warning. Gather your things and leave now, or we'll have to escort you out." That shut her down. She glared at me, eyes narrowing like daggers, and muttered something under her breath that I couldn't quite catch, but I didn't need to. The venom in her tone was enough to make the message clear. She yanked down one of the ribbons from the porch railing, crumpled it in her fist, and stormed toward her car. Her heels clicked against the gravel, each step like a drumbeat of rage. As she slammed the car door shut, she rolled down the window one last time, pointing a shaking finger in my direction. "This isn't over," she spat. "You think you've won, but you'll see what happens when the HOA gets involved." With that, she revved the engine, spraying dust and pebbles behind her as she tore down the road. Silence slowly settled back over the clearing. The officers exchanged a glance, shrugged, and gave me a reassuring nod before heading back to their cruiser. I exhaled, only then realizing how tense my body had been the entire time. The decorations still fluttered in the breeze, a strange reminder of how close my cabin had come to being overrun by 100 uninvited guests. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to repair the porch or sweep away the flower petals, I was going to install cameras, stronger locks, and make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Because if there was one thing I learned from that showdown, it was this: some people think rules don't apply to them. And if they're bold enough to call the police on you for defending your own property, they'll stop at nothing to get their way.